tell us when you were in Guam about your adventure on the B-29.
Oh, geez. Yeah, that's when I had the great adventure of flying. In fact, we had a lot of fun. I liked flying. It took us to the Philippines because there we had to fly not only routine weather reconnaissance missions, but also anytime we'd get a disturbance in the Pacific area, we'd have to go investigate it because that was a seabed of typhoons. And gee, I've been involved in about maybe 10 or 12 typhoons, and I can honestly say just about every one of them was different. Some would be very mild, and others, why it's a miracle I'm still alive. Because there was one time we were caught right in the eye of a typhoon as we tried to leave, and the current was so bad that, boy, it was just pulling us right down, and the two pilots just stood up in their seats like riding broncos, pulling back on the rudder, getting it up. And there's so much turbulence that I was holding a cup of tomato juice in my hand, and we dropped, and the tomato juice was up there, and I was down here, with the cup. There was such a sudden drop like that. And then the wind, rain pellets were coming at us at better than 140, 150 miles an hour. You could feel it striking the plane sort of like bullets, and you'd look down, and there would be no waves. It would all be one flat sheet of water because the caps were all blown flat. It was fury. It was hell down below there. And
how low were you?
Well, this pilot that flew with, he was kind of a daredevil, and he'd look at me and say, "Is that low enough? Judge, is that low enough?" And the idea is to find the eye of storm would be to fly under the clouds, because as long as the clouds will come in from your left, just like that, you were flying right into the eye. And if you were flying above in the clouds, you couldn't see anything, so you had to rely on radar, and radar was never that good, never that defined. So we'd be sometime around as low 100, 150 feet, and I'd be watching that radar altimeter, which would tell us about, over water, how high up, and it was between 100, 150. When you get down about 100, the blobs would be almost together, so it's pretty hard to tell just how low you were. But it was low, but after a while we stopped that because we lost two of the airplanes in typhoons. And after being in that storm, I kind of figured that's what had happened, that the fury was so tremendous, the force so powerful, that it was so low that the currents just took them right down into the water, because I know it scared the dickens out of us that we were so close to the water, and we were going down, and boy, these pilots were pulling back with all their might, getting us up to go up again. And then when you get in the center of the eye, the clouds would come out, there'd be seagulls flying in it. It was like heavens bursting on you. It was nice and warm, all this energy. The water just lapping back and forth gently. And then what we try and do is spiral above it and leave to another exit. And then the minute you left the eye, again, all hell, would break loose, all the fury, clouds like that. But today now, the procedure is that you never penetrate the eye of a storm unless you're at around 700 millibar, which is about between 9,000 and 10,000 feet. The average millibar, 9,800 feet, would be about 10,000 feet. But in the storm, if the pressure was so low, it could be 7,000 feet or 8,000 feet. So you just go by the 700 millibar level. There it was much safer because you're up at a higher level. And then, of course, we got into our routine flight. We lost one of our engines, and we couldn't feather the plane, the propeller, and it kept spinning and spinning and spinning.
Well, tell us what exactly happened in the beginning. You had an oil leak at first, so you shut the engine down?
An oil leak. So we decided to feather the planes, to stop the engine from going.
Was it an engine oil leak or a prop oil leak? Do you know?
I don't know what it was, but it was an oil leak, probably an engine leak. But we couldn't feather the propeller, and it kept windmilling. It kept moving, going round and round and round. Now it was all right as long as you had oil in it. But after we had lost all the oil, then friction set in. And we look at this outboard engine on the left-hand side, and then it started getting, you could see it started getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And we voted on the decision where would we go, to Iwo Jima, which was 3 miles, which was about 3 hours flying time, or back to Guam, which is about 7 to 8 hours, and that's where we made the biggest mistake of our lives, which cost the lives of other people, and all sorts of trouble, because that plane was still, from the time it hit, was in the air for about another 6 hours. Now, we could have made Iwo Jima, but at the time we didn't realize it. But all of us, well, let's go back to Guam. Our families were there. That was the biggest mistake we ever made. We decided to go there.
Were you in radio contact with your command post?
Sure. We immediately called in, and we said we're going to try and make it today. We called Mayday. Then we had a B-17 bomber with the
B-17 or another B-29?
No, I think this is a B-17 Air Sea Rescue with a boat slung underneath. Beats me now. Well, I think they had the B-17s there. They had the boats slung all under them. So they pulled up along with us. But after a while, finally, the engine came out. The propeller, just sheared from heat, just melted down. But instead of the engine or the propeller going out, it came in and hit the inside engine, set that afire, continued on its way into the fuselage, cut all the controls. So of course we're out of.
When it hit the other engine, was that prop still turning?
Oh yeah, we had three good engines. Yeah, that was still going. But when it hit it, it set that afire. We said, oh boy, now we've had it. And it was funny because an hour before that, the pilot was saying how he had a friend that the outboard engine went out. Exact similar situation. And what had happened was that sure enough, the propeller came off and hit the inside engine like that. And I think they were all killed. So, I never forgot that. That little side anecdote that he told that happened to a friend of his. So evidently he's happened to other planes like that. So to make a long story short.
Well, tell us about the bailout there. Tell us about the bailout, how you were going down.
You want to hear that again?
Yeah.
Okay, we started to go round and round circles. We were about 9,000 feet, and we were going down. And the pilot turned around. We couldn't get down to the nose wheel.
Why not?
Because the controls were all cut. We couldn't lower it. We couldn't get into the bomb bay at the time because the door was locked. So finally, I was sitting down by the bomb bay door. The other two guys were working on trying to get the thing, but they were, of course, nervous, and they weren't doing much with it. And my gosh, the seconds were ticking away, and now it was a matter of seconds. So I remember getting off the floor, off my butt, pushing the guy. I said, let me work it. Then very deliberately, and I tried to calm down because I knew every second counted, because I didn't know when we were going to hit that water. We're on our way down, more or less circling him down. So finally, I was able to unscrew the bolts to these 2x4s, moving up and down, pushing the side. We were able to get out. Then when we got out, the bomb bay door was closed. How do we get through there? Now, the only thing that was open was that hole that prop had made into the fuselage. That's the only way we could get out. But when we got into the bomb bay door, centrifugal force pushed us against the wall. I had my chute on and my dinghy, underneath, but you couldn't get out because you were pinned against the wall. So this navigator was in front of me, so I thought, well, I'll push him out. So I started, kind of shove him out. But he said, no, I've got to, get my parachute or something like that. I said, okay. So for a couple of seconds, the plane leveled off, and boy, I just went to that side and just looked up, and there was this propeller right in my face.
Was there a hatch there or what?
No, just that hole.
From the propeller that had come through?
That had come through. The edges were all ragged, all jagged, yes. So at the time I didn't realize it, but I had cut my leg and my suit, hugging that real close. So I just went to the edge of the plane, pulled down, and then I remember saying to myself, well, let's see, I'm supposed to count at 10. 1, 2, 3, but I didn't know how low I was. We were getting low and low, believe me. So I just counted 1, 2, 3, pulled the chute, and then was down, and the plane just went by. And the other guy saw me then that I got out all right, and he finally came out after I did. But everybody would stayed with the plane. Why they didn't have a Chinese chance because it went by. And then the plane that was accompanying the plane said they, I could hear it too.
There was an explosion.
Yeah, there was an explosion, maybe around 15, 20 seconds later. Who knows, how long, but it was a very, very short time.
Well, it was before you hit the water.
Oh, yeah, it was even before I hit the water, yeah.
Within a matter of seconds after you jumped.
Oh, yeah, it was real close, and then I popped into the water. I remember going down, looking up, and seeing it get first a light blue, dark, dark. Gosh, I gotta get out of here. How do I do it? So I was trying to struggle out of my parachute and, holding my breath and trying to inflate my Mae West, all the time. Because one thing I have to give myself credit for is I didn't lose my cool. Yeah, boy, that's the one thing. You have one chance, couple of seconds, and boy, you got to do the right thing. So fortunately, I didn't lose my head at all. I tried to go through the steps, but fortunately, I felt myself being pulled out like a fish out of water. Because evidently the chute had gone over the side. A gust of wind came along, billowed out, and pulled me right out. So I just held on, and I remember saying to myself, I'm just going to hang on. It can blow me across the ocean to China for all I care. But after about maybe 50 yards, 40, 50 yards, then just kind of collapsed. Then, of course, I heard stories about how pilots had gotten trapped into the shrouds like that, and, that was the end of them. Once they get trapped and it starts sinking, they can't get out of it. So as soon as it bellowed, I started backtracking. It's a good thing I knew how to swim, I was a good swimmer. So I backtracked out of it, and I got out of, the shroud, and then pulled a carbon monoxide cartridge on the one-man dinghy. That blew up, and then I got into it, and then it was just a matter of waiting for the Navy plane to come out the following day for us.
Well, how high were you, do you think, when you jumped out of the plane?
I kind of figured between 1,500 and 2,000 feet.
Oh, so you had a little bit of time then.
I mean, I didn't know. At that time, it was a question of getting out fast.
Oh, you don't
I
even
could have
recall?
even been lower.
You don't even recall looking down to see how far you were?
It might have been lower, because you know why? As I was falling down, I said, now what do I do next? I said, I know what. Just before I hit the water, I'll have to, hit my release button. And before I could even do that, I was in the water already. So maybe it was even closer than that. It had to be much closer than that, because at that time there was only one thought: to get out of that plane, because the pilots, you could see they were sweating bullets. And they said, get out, get out.
Did any of them get out?
No, they never did, they're very brave. Well, they stayed with that ship, until it went down, fighting it all the way, but they didn't have a chance. Nice guys, too.
How many guys got out of the plane?
Well, there were 6 of us up front. 2 of us got out there, the navigator and myself. The other navigator, the flight engineer, and the 2 pilots, they up front. And in the rear, there were 4 of them, and 2 got out there. So there's 4 out
So
of
4 out of 10 got out?
10, yeah.
Boy, you were pretty lucky.
Oh, yes, very, very fortunate.
How long were you floating in the water?
Oh, an hour or 2. Then what they did, this boat came along, the airplane, and they flew over me. About a mile down the way, they dropped this boat. And, geez, I didn't know what the deal was. I was in a boat waiting, hey, they rattled their wings, but they continued flying away from me. So evidently they had spotted 2 others, and then they figured, well, let's drop the boat to 2 others. And fortunately, those 2, somehow or another, they got the boat going. And
Was it a motorboat?
What's that?
Was it a motorboat or what?
Yeah, it was a motorboat.
Oh,
yeah.
so they were able to come over.
Fully equipped with water, food, and a radio in it, So, I don't know whether they floated back to me, or they...
No, remember you tried to contact them, and you said they were way down. You tried, the oar was broken or something, and they didn't see you?
Something like that. Was kind of hazy.
Yeah, something about the oar in your raft was broken, you said. And you tried paddling to them, and what did you do? You had a whistle or something? And
oh, yeah. You couldn't, at water there, you couldn't yell, because the wind was constantly blowing. You couldn't hear yourself, or you get hoarse. But the best thing was a whistle. It was piercing, sharp, and they could hear you. Well, somehow or another, we got together, and I got into the boat, and then the next morning, while we just stayed in that boat, next morning the Navy came and got us out. Yeah, we had the radio, and we couldn't make contact with the airplane because they were trying to signal us. There was somebody down the road, another guy, the fourth guy. They would fly over us in that direction, over in that direction, and we couldn't make out just exactly what they meant by.
So you never did pick them up?
Well, next day they picked the guy up. Very fortunate, black guy, colored guy too. He was the first one out of the plane. Yeah, he didn't waste any time, right? He was like dog, whoop, he took off. One guy went back for his parachute and it popped in the plane. Boy, he didn't have a chance.
Darn.
He went to get another one, he couldn't do it.
Jeez.
When something like that, when you have just a limited time, boy, you've got to do the right thing, and the right thing is fast. There are no second chances on something like that.
Well, how did you hear about it, Mom?
Oh, they came over. The CO, his CO came over.
No, Bechtel.
Yeah, and it was in the evening. It was dark already, about 7 o'clock. I had already fed you, and it wasn't quite time. What was it? Did I put you in bed? No, I didn't. And it was just about bedtime for you, and they came over, and then they said, well, we just want to tell you that your husband's plane went down. And they said, but we think they're all safe, that they saw life rafts opening up and so on and so forth. And all that next day they didn't know. And then,
Or chaplain.
I think it was 2 days later, then they said that, well, not everybody got out. There were 4 that they counted that got out. And of course I was just about in shot 4 out of 10. It's less than 50% chance of his being one of them. But they said that they didn't know who the 4 were. But later on they did.
Maybe.
Later on they did say that Dad was one of them. So that made up for it. But it was a couple of days of suspense and waiting and not knowing.
They bring them right back to Guam after they were rescued?
No, they didn't.
They stayed and looked around for anyone else
Any
that
more
they thought
survivors
may
they
have
had,
gotten
yeah.
off.
So instead of coming right back,
They
they
stayed.
were thinking of
2 or
putting
3
an
days.
amphibian down in the water, but the waves were too rough, to pick us up and bring
No,
us
a
back.
helicopter, you said.
No, I
didn't
think
you?
amphibian. No, the helicopter couldn't land on water. No, they wanted to land an amphibian plane. The Navy had one there, but the waves were too big, so they didn't try it. But they kept us out at sea about 4 or 5 days, crisscrossing back and forth, and trying to find more survivors, but they couldn't. And boy, believe me, when you're out there, you're like a needle in a haystack. Boy, even 100 yards away with those waves going up and down, someone could be out there and you don't see them. It's very, very tough finding somebody over in water. Very, very hard to find somebody, a boat or a person on water.
So you spent, about 2 days in the boat after you got into it?
Well, no, overnight. The Navy came after us the following day. But in the big ship, tender or whatever it was, oiler, he spent about 5 days there, 4 or 5 days.